All right, there we go. So I'm Toby. I'm from the lovely city of Hamburg in Germany. And we have this project called PrivacyScore.org. And for the next 20-ish minutes, I want to introduce you to the platform. I want to show you what it does and what our aims are. And I hope that, after this session, you will know what it is and you will hopefully like it. Maybe you will even send patches or bug reports. That'd be great. So let's start. PrivacyScore.org is a service for investigating security and privacy properties of web pages. So what does that mean? Well, there's several definitions, right? I mean, depending on who you ask, you get different answers as to what it means for a website to be privacy friendly or not. In our case, we were noticing that the city of Hamburg's web page, this is the website of the city of Hamburg, and this is the website for social welfare. So if I'm interested in social welfare, then I visit this website of Hamburg.de. You can't notice, but that's like the city where I live in. And on this website, you have multiple trackers, like plenty. These are the companies that also know that I'm interested in social welfare. And I mean, here in Europe, it's probably natural that this is a more tangible topic. Like it's a more privacy, this topic needs more privacy than other topics. I was recently in Cuba, and I think the concept of social welfare is a good thing, and people were not necessarily concerned about people learning that you're interested in social welfare because everybody does. So in Europe, however, it's a bit of a touchy subject, and you might not necessarily want other people to learn that you're not among the top 1% or whatever, and that you are interested in social health care. So these companies also learn that you are potentially poor or whatever. And the question we had is that the new normal? Like, do people do that? Is that like the world we're living in now? And we didn't really have a tool to answer this question, because you needed to investigate all these websites of the public sector and check whether they use external tracking companies or not. So we built this the service for scanning the websites, and then you could argue, well, there is so many services already that scan websites, right? There is the most famous one is probably the SSL Labs one, which scans your TLS configuration of your web service. And there is like a more privacy-focused thing from the data protection agency of, now I'm confused, I think it's Sweden, but I'm not entirely sure. And these services exist, and they are, they're providing their service, and it's great. And there's a few others. There's one from the Fraunhofer, and there's yet another one which sort of tries to make propaganda for using TLS on your web service. And these are all great services, and they're all good. There's more advanced ones, but they target the operators of the websites rather than the users. Or these services use a more predefined scheme of getting points to websites, of getting or of ranking the results. This is from the Mozilla Observatory, like the scheme of how they give you points or deduct points. And our idea was to have public benchmarks which make it possible for website operators to get a benefit out of making the website more privacy friendly. So how would that work? The idea was to have public lists. You would group similar websites. Imagine all German cities in like one list, and then you would see these websites being ranked. And hopefully, a lower ranked website would see that they could do better. They could, go to the top of the list when they would use one tracker less or something. So that you have a publicly available list of your, say, performance, how you compare to other websites, and then by implementing some more measures, you would, gain more points and thus be better in the ranking. And of course, these cities in Germany is just one example. You could easily think of other examples like, healthcare providers, or because we're at FOSDEM, of GNU Linux distributions or desktop systems. I'm a GNOME guy, by the way, so I have a slight bias towards GNOME, and I try to sneak in some propaganda, in favor of GNOME every so often. So you could do that. And this was the idea, to have these lists of websites and to have people compare, these websites among themselves. And what we do not want to do is do any kind of pen testing or aggressive sort of security checks, like things that would alter the state of the server, are not within our scope, and also it's legally more problematic and everything. We intend to have to make the user change the ranking, change the results, because for some people it might not necessarily be interesting to, I don't know whether these servers are located in Europe. This is especially true for American companies. If you're comparing American websites, then whether these servers are located in Europe or not is not necessarily interesting for the ranking of the websites. And our goal is to let the user configure their ranking and to enable the user to make their own informed decisions based on the data that we have collected. We're not there quite yet, but hopefully we'll get many new contributors soon, and then we'll get the patches to make that happen. And it's free software, of course, because we're at FOSDEM, right? This is GPL v3 software. You can download that from GitHub and install it and run it and improve and share and hopefully make the world a better place by scanning the websites and telling them how they could improve the privacy on the web. And so please check it out. PrivacyScore.org is the main website, and you'll find it easily on GitHub. And with this tool, coming back to the idea, we now have something that can scan various lists of websites and compare them in order to answer the initial question, the research question of whether Hamburg.de was more special than other cities. And there's actually this list. It's on PrivacyScore.org. If you click through the website, then you can see that we did add the city's use tracking services. We have these few lists. We do have news sites because it's more or less common knowledge that publishers, like news publishers, do use more tracking services than other, websites, categories of websites. We also have the GNU Linux distributions from distrowatch.com, and you see we have attributes. And the idea is that you can sort of correlate the attributes with their performance. Maybe bigger companies have better, privacy properties than smaller companies. Maybe older distributions are better in terms of privacy than newer distributions, things like that. And so you can create these lists. Everybody can create such a list, and hopefully these lists are annotated with a lot of properties. And we have projects with a standard FOSDEM, so you could, click open the list and see the results and check how many of the projects that we have here at FOSDEM use tracking services. Turns out all do, but 2. So all the, I forgot the exact number, like 100 or so projects being present here, all of them do tracking, but 2. The FSF, yay, and Viking hosting. And you can, of course, scroll to the very bottom of that list and, see where this project is here at FOSDEM, where they have their stand, and then approach them and tell them, well, listen, dude, if you would enable, I don't know, TLS 1.2 or so, then you would gain 2 points. Maybe you should do that, and then you would, your ranking would raise. You would be better in this list. So please check it out. It's live right now. You can check it out in this very moment. And then hopefully if you know people involved in these projects, and and you know who can make their websites better, more private, more privacy friendly, then please go there and approach them and help us making the web a better place. And we have, because I mentioned I'm a GNOME guy, we've also set up a list of desktop environments, and you can compare, which desktop performs how well in these tests, and maybe you select your new desktop environment based on these results. Maybe not. What do we do? So I've now talked a lot about the idea, what we intend to do, what we intend to achieve, and now I want to talk a little bit about how we intend to do that. Right now we have 4 categories of checks. So we check 4 big things. We have 4 pillars of checks that we do. And one big check is the node tracking check that uses OpenWPM. It's a great software library. It's a framework. It's essentially Firefox with a Selenium, and it does various, checks itself. It tells you how many requests the browser performed and how many of those requests were towards known tracking services and these type of things. So OpenWPM we use here, and then we sort of display the results in an aggregated and hopefully nicer manner. Then we use TestSSL for TLS, for checking the TLS configuration on the web servers, on the web server and on the mail server. And then we check things like, do they actually support TLS at all? Do they support TLS in recent versions? Does the TLS stack have known vulnerabilities? And you would be surprised to learn how many servers out there actually have known vulnerabilities that would be easy to check by simple update of their OpenSSL library or something. And these, we use these tools like TestSSL in this case and display the results in a hopefully nice manner. And then we check for basic attacks, relatively simple attacks that could be possible, or whether these attacks are possible at all. This includes certain headers that should improve the security while browsing the web. Think of the X-frame options header, or think of the content type header, so that that your web browser defends certain attacks or that your web browser can defend against certain attacks more easily than if the header was not set. We also do some interesting information leakage checks. I like those because, they tend to be more dramatic in certain cases. This is instances of people leaving their private key around. We test for domain.com/key. Or private.key or something, or domain.key, and then sometimes people just leave their stuff behind on the root directory of their web server without deleting it, and then you may be able to fetch that private information. And of course, when you find the private key of the TLS certificate, then you can decrypt all the communication, and that's no good, right? So we do these types of checks as well, and we're of course open to more checks. We don't. Currently, we're not, doing all the checks possible because we simply don't have the tooling to do that. So if you, can think of a certain check that you think is important, then we'll be happy to add it to the PrivacyScore.org platform. So I've talked about that. How does the actual ranking then look like? By now, some of you have opened the website already. I've seen. We have these. We have the concept of lists. So people are supposed to upload lists with the URLs, and then optionally some attributes for each entry. And then we show the results in these columns, and the user can change their ranking based on their preferences by reordering these columns. In the future, we hope to have a more fine-grained sorting and filtering mechanism for the results. Right now, it's a bit primitive. We're being academic, so we're not necessarily the software engineers, the best software engineers. We code up until the point where it works, and then we probably need to go on to the next project. So this is there's a lot of room for improvement. That's the positive formulation of the situation. So there's many patches can be contributed still because it's not yet the pinnacle of software design and architecture. So there's if you want to learn some Python and web and Django, then you can improve the project probably very easily. There's some low-hanging fruit around. Anyway, we try to make, as I said, we try to enable the regular user to make informed decisions based on the data. So we are trying to display the information in in a manner that allows users to make informed decisions. And in this case, we've opted for these like red, yellow, and green status icons. And green with a tick mark is good, and red with an X is not so good, and the middle ground is like the orange thing. And we try to make a sort of an aggregate of the results available also, so that you get a general idea of how well or how bad this list performs overall. And this is the list, and then you can get the more detailed results by clicking on one item of this list, and then you see what checks have been performed, and then you can hopefully learn how to make your results better with the next scan. So that's the idea, at least, that you can improve your offering if you wanted to. You can expand certain items to get a more detailed description of what the check is about and what it means, or what the result means, how the result came together. This is a PHP info. We get this often. Many people leave PHP info.php around, and then you can say, well, so people learn that I run PHP. What's the matter? Well, you're right. That's probably public information. Everybody does PHP. Everybody's sorry about it. Nobody really wants to run it. Everybody knows that. It's a terrible thing. In this case, though, we see that it's a very old Linux version, right? It's been built 2.5 years ago from now. And this particular version is probably 8 security fixes behind the most recent state. So with this information, you can infer, or the hypothesis is that with this version, you have at least 8 security vulnerabilities because you've skipped 8 releases, 8 minor fixes. And so the attacker, may have an easier game if they know that you're running this version, which is, vulnerable against this or that attack. And this happens very often. And I think that website operators do not necessarily want to expose that, right? They do that because they are installing the service or whatever, and then once they're done, they go on to the next project, and maybe they've just forgotten to delete this file. And maybe such a tool like PrivacyScore.org would be very helpful for them to, well, not forget about these things. So we're trying to be helpful there and make the world a better place. People might not necessarily be happy with us, being such an intrusive client and requesting all these weird, or potentially malicious files. And some people might rightfully ask, well, are you actually allowed to do that? With what gives you the right to open our website? Well, this is this sort of request that we get every now and then. And because we're in Germany, you cannot simply, open a website. You need to have this investigated whether you can. And we did. Turns out, yes, you can open websites. Okay. But it's not as trivial as it sounds, right? So I spare you the details. But in this, like a couple of weeks ago, we got requests. We got this, as I've said, we've got these emails. How dare you to open our websites from companies who are ranked in lists and who are not necessarily happy with being, out there in the public and all. So it is German people ask the question whether it is legal to open websites, and TLDR, yes, it is. Of course, you might not only ask the legal question, but also the ethical question. Do we really want, to expose the information that certain hosts are vulnerable or not to certain attacks? Because it also makes it easier for attackers to, well, compromise services, compromise the privacy of users, and it's a valid question to ask. And we've opted for saying yes. Well, we hope, or we think that the greater good is to make it easy for website operators to fix up their services, and we do not directly show certain results, which could be or which could lead to an easy compromise of the target service. And we try to, be as helpful as possible without exposing information that would be used for attacking purposes only. And of course, if you really don't want to be listed on the website, then we respect that and we put you on a blacklist so that you'll never be scanned again. And we expose that fact also. Like everything, we try to be as open and as transparent as possible, because the actual main motivation is to make the web more transparent, because transparency is what we think is lacking in this whole tracking thing. Because, as I've said, the initial motivation was to find out whether Hamburg was particularly bad or not by using all these tracking services, and it's not transparent. It's simply not easy to see whether, like, city websites do that or not. So we are trying to increase the transparency by making all the data public, by making all the results public, so that everybody can see and make their own judgment about how the situation is. So how do we actually do that? I need to rush, right? We have this architecture which sort of evolved a bit over time, where we have this the queue of jobs which we distribute to several virtual machines. We have around 30 right now. That includes like the web service, the publicly facing web service, and like 28 or so virtual scanning machines. And that's basically just a Debian image which has Firefox and the Open WPM and everything installed. And then, well, it distributes jobs via a Redis queue, and they return the results and everything. And we do collect the data from all the hosts, and then we interpret when rendering the results. That's clever, because then you can easily change your requirements and your ordering and everything. And it's not so clever, though, because it's very intense in terms of computing. So just these 3 sites real quick. I've mentioned that we put up the list of projects being present here at FOSDEM, and these are some basic results. So you might very well ask the question, how many cookies do I get when I visit eclipse.org? The answer is 78. And is that good or bad? Well, it's actually the worst. This is you won't get as many cookies anywhere else as from eclipse.org. Yay. And is that normal? Well, it's not that unusual, because LibreOffice.org gives you 75. Out of those, you get one third-party cookie. Like these are first-party cookies or second-party cookies. This is third-party cookies, and these are known trackers, like companies that will collect your data over time and sell them, which companies who we know of that they do that. And then you may ask, well, how is the tracking situation? This is now sorted by trackers, and we see that OpenStack.org gives you 5 long-term tracking cookies of companies that we know will sell your profile after a certain while. And the list is bad. So here's the result. Now you see how the situation is. This is like a real quickly drawn table. And you can see 0 third-party requests are being performed by 9 sites. And then you can see how many requests are, how the distribution is of the third-party requests over sites. And then I am finally able to close my session, and I want to thank you for your attention. And I hope I will see you soon on GitHub, and I hope you will send more lists, that you will send bug reports, ideas, and of course patches. Thank you very much.